Hey everyone, Pickled Dill here. Happy 5,000 subscriber special. For this special, I'm going to cover a topic many of you have requested I do. What if Ash woke up on time? However, since this has already been done by creators such as Enter the Unknown, Trainer Dino, Vegeta What Ifs, and Dex Comics, I will attempt to keep it a bit more succinct than my usual stories, while also putting a different spin on it. However, before we get into the story, I'd like to turn your attention to this analytics bar. Currently less than half of my viewers are subscribed, so please if you like my content, drop a sub and put a like on this video. Since it's free, tells the YouTube algorithm that you like what I do, and it helps me to grow. Also, if you really want to help me out, consider checking out my second channel, where I do what ifs on non-Pokemon topics, or heading over to my Patreon and supporting me there for early access to all my content, as well as access to my Patreon exclusive series, What If Ash Used His Old Pokemon? The link to both of those are in the description below, but without further ado, let's start the story. Our tale begins in Pallet Town, during the wee hours of the morning. 10-year-old Ash Ketchum is set to begin his Pokemon journey today, but right now he is fast asleep, dreaming of the adventures still to come. During his slumber, Ash's Voltorb alarm clock rolls from its perch and into his bed. However, here Destiny steps in, having the orb come to rest not in the boy's hand, but by his head instead, positioning it perfectly to wake him in a few hours when it rings at the prearranged time. Jumping up with a yelp at the noise right next to his ear, Ash is bewildered for a moment, but then a grin splits his face as he realizes what day it is. Changing into his traveling clothes, Ash doesn't even stop for breakfast, instead running up the main street of Pallet with a piece of toast sticking out of his mouth, his eyes set squarely on the one and only Oak Pokemon Labs. To the professor's surprise, the normally scatterbrained Ash is the first young trainer to arrive, and so with a smile he welcomes him inside, bidding him to choose the Pokemon who will be his lifelong partner. Ash does not need to stop and think about this, having spent many hours contemplating this decision, and so proudly announces that he wants Squirtle. Oak calls this a fine choice, and so hands Ash Squirtle's ball, along with a Pokédex and 5 empty Pokeballs. Ash thanks the old man, then wastes no time bringing out his Squirtle. Blinking as if not used to this light, Squirtle looks up at Ash as the boy introduces himself and asks if it wants to come with him. Squirtle nods eagerly at this offer, then blows a rather large bubble roughly the size of its head, passing it to Ash, and in turn having it thrown back in a game of catch. Ash and Squirtle maintain this game for several minutes, building not only a playful friendship, but also a sense of coordination as they quickly get a feel for the way the other moves and works in their attempt to keep the bubble from hitting the floor and bursting. Eventually though, this game must end, and as it does, Ash eagerly tells his new friend that it's time they get going, as they have a whole wide world to explore and a journey to begin. Meanwhile, not too far away in another Pallet Town home, a different boy is rising from his slumber. Unlike Ash, there is no urgency to his movements as he sashays into the dining room, where half a dozen delicious breakfast foods are waiting for him. Eating at his leisure, this boy then meanders back upstairs to shower, and pick an outfit he feels will most impress the people of Pallet Town for his trainer debut. From downstairs, his mother calls out, suggesting that he really should be getting to the lab, but with a confident scoff, the youth retorts there's no rush, knowing Gramps he's already set aside the best Pokemon for him. After all, he's Gary Oak. When he is good and ready, Gary saunters down to the lab, where a crowd is formed to see him off. His maternal grandfather, the mayor, has even provided him with a convertible, a chauffeur, and a group of cheerleaders. Not that he deserves any less as a future Pokemon master. So all there's left to do now is collect his Pokemon and be on his way. Swanning into the lab, Gary greets his Gramps Professor Oak, telling him to point him towards the starters, and with a nod, the old man gestures to a machine where 3 Pokeballs rest. Having no doubt in his mind, Gary reaches immediately for Squirtle's ball, declaring that he chooses it, only for the ball to spring open, revealing nothing. Nodding gravely, Oak tells his grandson that this Pokemon was already chosen by someone who was on time, causing Gary to scowl that he thought Gramps knew to put that one aside for him. But no matter, he can make do with Charmander. Grabbing the Fire-type's ball, he is shocked to have the same thing happen as with Squirtle's, and wasting no time, the younger Oak snatches up Bulbasaur's ball, only to be met by failure once again, as his grandfather quips that the early bird gets the worm, or in this case, the Pokemon. Petulantly, Gary demands to know how his Gramps could have let this happen to him, but with a reassuring tone, Oak explains that he does have one more Pokemon left. It's a bit more volatile than the rest, so he didn't want to offer it to any of the other new trainers, but for a smart young man like Gary, he's confident the pair can develop a deep and meaningful bond. Nodding at this confirmation of his own greatness, Gary tells his Gramps to let him have it, and with the press of a button, a 4th Pokeball bearing a lightning bolt on it appears in the center of the machine. Taking hold of it, Gary tells the Pokemon inside to come on out, and in a flash of light, his new partner appears, taking shape as a small electric rodent. Being the grandson of the region's professor, Gary already knows what this is, and so greets Pikachu with a grin, introducing himself, and saying the two of them are going to go on an adventure. However, Pikachu seems wholly disinterested, turning his head away from Gary in a very clear clear snub. Trying to mask his scowl, Gary tells Pikachu that it'll be fun. Though when the electric mouse still does not acknowledge him, the young oak tells his Gramps that he thinks this one's a dud. This at last gets Pikachu's attention, with the temperamental electric type using Thundershock to electrocute his new trainer, and Professor Oak, who is standing nearby. When he is done, he gives the boy a contemptuous look, as if asking if he still thinks he's a dud. Though now Gary's entire demeanor has changed, as he grins that with power like that, he'll become a Pokemon master in no time at all. Sagely, Oak reminds his grandson that there's more to being a Pokemon master than just power, but Gary doesn't want to hear it, telling Pikachu to come on, since the car's waiting and he wants to hit up the Viridian gym before nightfall. To the boy's chagrin, Pikachu meets this declaration with the same enthusiasm as all of Gary's other ones. That is to say, none, as he flops down on the machine and begins scratching himself behind the ear, almost mockingly, as if he is telling Gary that he has no intention of listening to him or following his schedule. By now the scowl is definitely on Gary's face, as he's unused to anyone refusing him, and so grumbling that he doesn't have time for this, the boy points Pikachu's Pokeball at him and commands him to return. At once a beam of red light shoots out to encompass the electric rodent, and as it does, Gary spots a change in Pikachu's expression. Instead of anger or loathing, it's something much harder to recognize. Figuring that's a problem for later, Gary bids his Gramps goodbye, then after receiving his Pokédex and Pokeballs, returns to his adoring public, bombastically thanking them for coming out, and promising to make the town of Pallet known around the world when he becomes a Pokemon master. This causes the assembled crowd to erupt in cheers, as Pallet's golden boy hops in the back of his convertible and is driven away while cheerleaders chant his name enthusiastically. This trip by car is a brief one, as by following the road, Gary is able to reach Viridian City in half an hour, a thought which amuses him as he imagines Ashy Boy and those other two scrubs who started before him still trying to get through Route 1 on foot. As they say, it's better to work smarter, not harder, and no one's smarter than Gary Oak. Laughing to himself, Gary gets to work heading straight for Route 22, since he's heard one of his Gramps' favorite rare Pokemon lives there, and if he's gonna make his first capture, it might as well be something more impressive than a standard Pidgey or Rattata. Thanks to actually knowing about Pokemon, Gary is quickly able to locate exactly the one he wants, making his way to the place where its natural food source can be found, then following the freshest tracks. This leads him directly to a pack of Nidoran, and spotting what appears to be the alpha male, he brings out Pikachu. From the look on the rat's face, he is none too happy to see his trainer, though there is no time for foul feelings, as upon spotting this little yellow interloper, the Nidoran leader has gone into a frenzy, rushing at Pikachu with Horn Attack. Not wanting to fight for Gary, Pikachu's first instinct is to run, but this only results in him being cornered by the rest of the pack. Seeing that he has no choice, Pikachu lets out a Thundershock, and thanks to all his latent power, this is enough to take out the whole pack, including the alpha. Grinning, Gary thanks the electric rodent for the assist, before lobbing a pair of Pokeballs, catching both the alpha Nidoran as well as one of the females for good measure. With this out of the way, it is a piece of cake to start catching the other Pokemon who live on the route, as unlike Pikachu, his pair of Nidoran are perfectly obedient, with him soon adding a Spearow and a Pidgey to his roster. By now it is mid-afternoon, and so after stopping off at the Pokemon Center to get his team healed up, Gary heads for the Viridian Gym, confident in his ability to win his first badge. However, upon reaching the gym, he is stopped by a pair of men in Centurion outfits, who declare that the Viridian Gym is closed, with the leader being away on business, though even if he wasn't, he doesn't have time to waste on beginner trainers. Angrily, Gary asks if these bucketheads know who he is, but this just makes the Centurions laugh, as they tell him to scram or else. Fuming, Gary is forced to return to the Pokemon Center empty-handed. Though refusing to lose his momentum, he uses this time to read up on the next closest gym. Thankfully, there is a Rock-type one in Pewter City, as well as a Water Gym just after. These should be easily manageable for his Pokemon, and so with his sights now set on Pewter, he heads off again. Unlike the trip to Viridian, this is one Gary will have to make on foot, as convertibles, while stylish, are not incredibly well equipped for traversing forests. To this end, he also sends his cheerleaders home, saying he'll meet them in Cerulean City, since this leg of his journey will be easier to undertake solo. Setting off into Viridian Forest on his own, Gary wastes no time in catching himself a Weedle and a Caterpie, with him sending Weedle back to his Gramps for safekeeping. On top of this, he also begins to work on his primary goal while here in the forest, teaching his male Nidoran Double Kick, since that will surely be more than enough to overcome Brock. Wanting to reach this goal as quickly as possible, he has Nidoran battle every wild Pokemon they come across, with little Poison type quickly proving himself an eager and aggressive battler, unlike Pikachu, who on the few occasions Gary brings him out, is as uncooperative and hard-headed as ever. When night falls and the Pokemon of the forest hunker down to sleep, Gary still does not stop, having Nidoran train against the other members of his team, with this yielding noticeable returns, both for the Poison Pin Pokemon and his training partners. Even Pikachu participates in this, if only because it means he's able to battle against Gary as payback for repeatedly sticking him in his ball when he is not battling. However, to the mouse's surprise, after only a few hours of training with Gary, Nidoran has already caught up to his level, as where once a single Thundershock could take the poison type out, now he can tank a few, and even deal some serious damage back in return. The following morning, after a good night's sleep, Gary experiences another milestone, his very first trainer battle, when a lunatic in samurai cosplay leaps out at him with a katana. At first, Gary isn't quite sure how to take this, though after the boy explains his name is Samurai and he wishes to battle, Gary's tune changes entirely. Squaring off, the pair agree to a 2v2, though this is hardly necessary as when Samurai chooses Metapod, Gary has Nidoran take the prone pupa out with a single horn attack. Following this, Samurai brings out his heavy hitter and pincer, and while it does not go down quite as easily as Metapod, when it grabs hold of Nidoran with its barbed horns, this is just the impetus the poison pin Pokemon needs to master double kick, using the first kick to force the painful vice apart, and the second to strike the top of Pincer's head, ending the battle. Recalling Nidoran with acknowledgement of a job well done, Gary turns to leave, though before he can get far he is stopped by Samurai, who demands he take him on as a student. Not sure if he could put up with the other boy's intensity for any extended period of time, Gary declines, telling the swordsman that he's really not the teacher type. Hanging his head, Samurai requests that Gary at least tell him where he learned to be so strong, with the brunette replying that most of what he knows he learned from his gramps, Professor Oak. This perks Samurai back up, as he roars that of course, it's only naturally lost to the scion of the proud house of Oak, before asking if there are any more of his kin that he might battle. Not entirely sure what Samurai means, Gary shrugs that there should be 3 other trainers from Pallet Town coming by soon if he wishes to challenge them, and offer the excitable boy is happy to accept. Speaking of excitable and Pallet Town trainers, we pick back up with Ash, as he finally reaches Viridian City. Thanks to having an obedient starter, he was able to catch himself a Pidgey with Squirtle's help, and so continued on at a reasonable pace, hunkering down when a nasty storm hit and resuming in the morning. Wanting to get his 2 Pokemon checked out, he stops off at the Pokemon Center, though when he arrives, he finds the place cordoned off with police tape, soon learning from an Officer Jenny that the center was robbed last night by a group of thieves calling themselves Team Rocket. This deeply upsets the young man, imagining how the poor kidnapped Pokemon must be feeling, but with nothing he can do to help, he continues on into Viridian Forest, eager to make some new Pokemon friends. As this happens, Gary is making his way out of the forest, finally feeling as though Nidoran is ready to take on the gym. After stopping off at the Pewter Pokemon Center, he promptly heads to the only building in town made out of giant rocky slabs, which unsurprisingly turns out to be his target. Stepping inside, Gary declares his intent to challenge, causing the gym leader's platform to become illuminated, as a young man with spiky hair states that he is Brock the gym leader, and that he will grant the boy's request for a battle. As a rocky battlefield appears in the middle of the room, Brock then states that their match will be a 2-on-2, though with a cocky grin, Gary declares he only needs 1 Pokemon, bringing out his Nidoran, as Brock chooses Geodude. As planned, Nidoran goes straight for a double kick, with both blows connecting, though to Gary's surprise this is not enough to down the rock Pokemon, as Brock lightly admonishes that there's more to Pokemon battling than just type matchups. It's also about the bonds of partnership, with his and Geodude's being strong and long-standing enough that they won't crumble at the first sign of a fighting type move. To prove this point, he has Geodude use Tackle, with the Boulder's shoulder charge knocking Nidoran off his feet. Squeaking with pain, the Poison Pin Pokemon lands on his side, while Brock suggests that maybe Gary ought to do a bit more training before challenging him again. However, Gary will not hear of it, ordering Nidoran to get up, with the rabbit dutifully clambering back to his feet. Praising the determination, Brock has his old friend use Tackle again, but this time Gary is ready, having Nidoran jump over Geodude and use double kick from behind so that when the 2 kicks land, their force works with Geodude's momentum rather than against it, causing the rock type to lurch forward faster than expected and crash headlong into the gym wall before it can change course. This leaves it open to one last double kick, and never one to pass up an easy victory, Gary has Nidoran pounce on Geodude and end things there. Brock's second Pokemon is none other than his Onix, with the Rock Leviathan roaring fiercely as it takes to the field. However, instead of being cowed, Nidoran attempts to return the favor, screaming right back at Onix in an attempt to assert dominance. This is dreadfully ineffective though, as while Onix is a massive serpent made of rocks, large and heavy enough to crush a car, Nidoran is a 1-foot-tall purple rabbit, with at least half of that height being his ears. Nonetheless, the Poison Pin Pokemon stands firm, glaring daggers at Onix until Gary has him attack. Rushing in, Nidoran attempts to use Double Kick to bring this battle to a swift conclusion, though surprisingly Onix is faster, bringing its massive tail down to swat the little quadruped away before he can even make it halfway across the field. Letting out a squeal of pain, Nidoran flops to the floor once again, though it seems this time he has left his opponent with a parting gift, as when Onix next lets out a bellow, it is one of pain, with Brock quickly surmising that his rock serpent has been poisoned thanks to coming into contact with Nidoran's horn. Recognizing that time is no longer on their side, Brock tells Onix to wrap things up with wrap, causing Nidoran to be scooped up as the stones of Onix's tail constrict around him. Letting out another pained squeal, the tiny poison type fights tooth and nail to free himself from his prison. Though against such a large and powerful Pokemon, this is just as ineffectual as his intimidation tactics. Knowing that Nidoran can't hold on much longer and that no one else in his team stands a chance against Onix, Gary resorts to a desperate play, telling Nidoran to use double kick on himself. Squeaking his understanding, Nidoran slams his feet into each other, with the force of this self-inflicted double kick being enough to send him shooting out of Onix's grasp like a cork from a champagne bottle. Flying upwards in a parabola, Nidoran attempts to repeat the trick when he lands on one of Onix's boulders, except instead of kicking off his own feet, he kicks off Onix, allowing him to keep bouncing while dealing super effective damage to the rock snake. By continuing this, Nidoran is able to climb Onix's serpentine body until he finally reaches the rock type's head, at which point he delivers a two-footed kick between the eyes that sends the behemoth crashing to earth. Landing in front of it, Nidoran, like his trainer, knows that one more good hit should end things, though as the poisoned snake groans weakly, a group of high-pitched voices speak up, pleading with Gary not to hurt Onix. Looking into the shadowy recesses of the gym, Gary spots a group of children, all of whom share a resemblance to Brock, and as he meets their eyes, they all cry once more that Onix is their big bro's best friend, so they can't stand to see it lose. Unfortunately for them, Gary is unmoved by such appeals to emotion, flicking his hair and cockily grinning that sometimes losing comes with the territory of being a gym leader, and they can't blame him just because his Pokemon's stronger. He then calls for one last double kick, and as the poison pin Pokemon slams his feet into the rock type's face, Onix faints, ending the match in Gary's favor. Unlike his siblings, Brock has no recrimination for the young challenger as he approaches him, handing him the Boulder badge and congratulating him on his win. Still with that self-satisfied smirk on his face, Gary tells the gym leader not to take his loss too hard, since he's the grandson of Professor Oak and a future Pokemon master to boot. Then with a perfunctory smell you later, he departs, with Nidoran by his side. Following another visit to the Pokemon Center, Gary gets back on the road, and though it takes him several more days to reach Mount Moon, he does not waste this time, battling every trainer he meets and growing stronger as a result. During this time, Gary's Caterpie evolves into a Metapod and then a Butterfree soon after, while Nidoran proves himself to be the unequivocal ace of the team. This latter fact troubles Pikachu, as in such a short span of time he has gone from being stronger than the poison type to his inferior, having barely grown at all since leaving Pallet Town. Wanting to correct this, he begins to work harder in his training, even going along with Gary's instructions, albeit begrudgingly. In turn, Gary begins to use Pikachu more in battle, as well as giving him praise and other forms of positive reinforcement, such as allowing him to walk alongside him once he realizes how much the electric mouse hates his Pokeball. As a result, Trainer and Star do begin to form something of a bond, as they are both stubborn, innately talented, and driven to be the very best. To this end, by the time they reach the end of Route 3 and the entrance to Mount Moon, Pikachu is once more able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Nidoran at the forefront of the team. Meanwhile, Ash has finally made his way out of Viridian Forest, having defeated Samurai with Squirtle's hard shell proving too much for Pince's horns. He has also caught himself a Weedle, which has evolved into a Kakuna, though neither it nor Pidgey are needed for his upcoming gym battle, as with its quite effective water typing, Squirtle's bubble attack is more than enough to make short work of both Onix and Geodude. This means Ash is victorious on his first attempt, though more importantly, without his time training Ash, Flint never feels compelled to fulfill his responsibilities as a father and the true pewter gym leader, meaning Brock remains at the gym, while Ash journeys onwards alone. Back with Gary as he finally makes his way into Mount Moon, he is accosted by none other than Seymour the Scientist, with the bespectacled young man being all a Twitter thanks to the recent addition of lights by some unknown group disturbing the Pokemon native to the mountain. Spotting Pikachu by Gary's side, Seymour implores him as a trainer to help, with Gary agreeing under the proviso that Seymour help him get his hands on one of the rare moonstones said to be found here, so that he can eventually evolve his Nidoran after he becomes a Nidorino. As it turns out, the source of the disturbance is none other than Biff and Cassidy, as after Jesse and James' successful heist back in Viridian, they are now the bottom of the Team Rocket totem pole, with the hope being that by bringing Giovanni a giant moonstone, they can get back in his good graces. Unfortunately for them, Gary has no sympathy for such crooks, having Pikachu and Nidoran team up against their Raticate and Primate, with the villainous squad being sent blasting off again as their lights are also destroyed. In the aftermath of this battle, the only light is Nidoran's glowing body as he at last evolves into Nidorino, while all around him the Clefairy begin to return. Following the jolly pink sprites, Gary and Seymour bear witness to their evolutionary ceremony as several of them approach fragments of the giant moonstone and are transformed into Clefable. Smiling, Seymour tells Gary that he can collect his reward now if he wants, but with a cool shake of his head, the young brunette replies that it looks like it means a lot to the Clefairy, so he'll find another somewhere else. Touched by this, Seymour informs Gary that he has a sample of moonstone back at Celadon University which the boy can have, with the Pallet Town native promising to take him up on the offer when he finally passes through Celadon. Following this, it is only a short walk to the end of the cave, with Gary stopping only briefly to catch himself a Zubat and a Geodude. Next up is Route 4, with it taking him several more days to get through here, though as he goes, he makes sure to add a few more Pokemon to his ever-growing team, as well as working with Nidorino to get him used to his new larger body. He even finds time to write a little message for Ash on the route marker indicating Cerulean City is nearby. Then with no further business, he continues on to Cerulean. Now that he is finally here, Gary's first order of business is to check into the Pokemon Center, not only so he can make sure his Pokemon are okay, but also so he can reunite with his cheerleaders, who have been eagerly awaiting his arrival. As expected, they greet him with an exuberant cheer, which only further inflates his ego, as he declares that they're gonna head straight for the Cerulean Gym and win him his second badge. The cheering squad also fangirl over Pikachu when they finally get to see him up close without threat of being electrocuted, and having taken on some of his trainer's qualities, Pikachu can't help but enjoy the adulation. Eventually, Nurse Joy clears Gary's team, and without a moment to spare, he and his friends make a beeline for the gym. Here they are met by a trio of young women who call themselves the Sensational Sisters, and having not yet been disheartened by the other Pallet Town trainers, they accept his challenge, with their gym battle being a simple 1v1 against Daisy. Having already read that this place is a water gym, Gary has no trouble with his pick, calling for Pikachu, while Daisy chooses Seal. The battlefield is a long pool with several floating platforms, and as the little electric rodent leaps onto one of them, he is met by a cheer of "Pikachu, Pikachu, we believe in you, Pikachu, Pikachu, we believe in you," a fact which only bolsters his confidence as the call is given for the battle to begin. Slipping into the water, Seal stares at its opponent, while brimming with confidence, Daisy declares that her Pokemon is a top-class water performer, whose grace and elegance make it unmatched in, though before she can finish, Gary has Pikachu electrocute the water, dealing massive damage to the sea lion Pokemon, who floats to the surface looking dazed. This prompts another chorus from the cheerleaders praising Gary this time, and looking a little flustered, Daisy snaps at her sisters to come up with a cheer for her. Racking their brains, Lily and Violet half-heartedly begin one, though quickly give up, claiming that rhyming is, like, totally hard. Unfortunately for Daisy, while this has been going on, things have gone from bad to worse for Seal, as when she attempts to have the water type use Headbutt, Pikachu simply dodges, using his vaunted speed to leap from platform to platform, before coming back for a quick attack of his own. This knocks Seal into the water, and before Daisy can do anything else, Gary has Pikachu use Thunder Shock on the water once more, taking Seal out and ending the match almost as soon as it began. Swanning over to the sisters, Gary mocks that this was the easiest battle he's ever had, claiming that he's battled youngsters with Rattata who gave him more of a challenge than them. Pouting, Daisy states that maybe she won't give him the badge then, but being the most level-headed of the three, Lily says that isn't an option, handing Gary the Cascade badge he is owed, though with a look of distinct dislike. Seeing as how Pikachu took no damage in the fight, there is no need to return to the Pokemon Center, with Gary and his gang instead taking off towards Vermilion City in the convertible. As a result of this speedier and more direct method of travel, Gary does not come across the Hidden Village, Damien, or the Squirtle Squad, though he does stop in a town being terrorized by the tiny turtles to buy himself a snack from the general store. Eventually, however, Gary does reach Vermilion City, where he finds the gym leader to be none other than an electric-type specialist, said to use a Raichu of incredible power. The idea of such a challenge excites Pikachu, and though Gary is a little hesitant to enter at what he perceives to be a disadvantage, he also knows that Pikachu is as stubborn as he is, so there's no point arguing with the rat. Heading into the gym, Gary and his cheerleaders are met by a mountain of a man who introduces himself as Lieutenant Surge. He also fawns over the girls, going in for a group hug, though moving as one, the cheer squad all step back, causing the big man to fall on his face. Clearing his throat, Gary points out that he is actually the challenger here, with Surge dusting himself off and taunting that what he is a baby. Unlike Ash, Gary is not troubled by this put-down, telling Surge he can call him whatever he wants, since he's got a name for the lieutenant too, the guy he's about to beat for his third gym badge. Unfortunately for Gary, bravado is no substitute for power, and after foregoing many training opportunities by traveling here in his car, Gary and Pikachu lack the strength to stand up to Raichu, with the battle going about as badly as in canon, with Pikachu being hospitalized as a result. Also like in canon, Gary is left with a choice when Nurse Joy presents him with a Thunderstone, pointing out that Pikachu could become a Raichu just like Surge's if he uses this. Looking between the stone and Pikachu's battered body, Gary weighs his options, then as he takes a seat beside his starter's bed, he makes his choice. And that's where we'll leave things. What further changes to the timeline can we expect from Ash and Gary swapping starters? Can Ash ever catch up to Gary's seemingly insurmountable lead? And will Gary force Pikachu to evolve into Raichu? Find out as the journey continues.